Welcome to this episode of No Free Lunch, Economics for a Fallen World. I'm Dr. Jeff Guernsey, joined, as always, by Dr. Jeff Heyman. So, Dr. Heyman, we want to talk about profit. Distinguish economic profit from perhaps what accountants would call profit. They're slightly two different things.
Sure. So when we think about profit, we think about, hey, I'm going to make a certain amount of money. I spend $50 on these my lemons and my sugar for my lemonade stand, and I sell it for $100, and so I made a $50 profit. And sure enough, we might say if that's truly all the costs, that you didn't have anything for the stand or a license or anything else, you would pay taxes on that $50. We would call that accounting profit, and we've got to keep that account, A, to pay taxes. Also, if you had somebody that would be loaning you the money, they might get their share, they want to see that. So that's the way of an accountant would look at that. We made a profit of $50. The economist would look at this a little bit differently. And it would say, look, the person that was behind that lemonade stand, let's say it's me who has a PhD in economics, and let's say I was downtown all Saturday for 10 hours selling that lemonade. And so rather than saying I made a profit of $50, if the opportunity cost, let's just say that as a PhD economist, I might be able to do some consulting if I did it for a whole day of $250. And we made an accounting profit of $50, but the opportunity cost of my time would have been $250. We would say in economic terms, I made a $200 loss, because every resource input has alternative uses, and those alternative uses command a price as well. And that's what we think about in terms of economic profit and loss. Did we get the most value out of those scarce resource inputs? Were they employed in their highest valued opportunities? And if they're not employed in their highest valued uses, then we say there's a loss. If they are, then the surplus over that we would then agree with the accounting profit, because we have to take into consideration what the entrepreneur's time and effort, for example, could also provide.
So is it right to say the accountant thinks of all, or accounts for all the extrinsic costs, or maybe I'm looking for the wrong word here, but the scene costs, and you're accounting for what could have happened.
What could have been, yeah. That opportunity cost always considers that next best alternative, which as you said, the seen versus the unseen. Yeah. A lot of people don't think about, when you're doing your own. How many of us think, if I do this job myself, I'm going to save a lot of money? Well, that's not really true. Now, you might save some money in the sense of you didn't have anything going out of your checkbook to pay for that, but you will have lost what you could have done otherwise. And there's some real reason we have gains from specialization. In many cases, it's better to hire out and have somebody else do it, even though you think you're saving money. This is another example of it.
So profit, firms from an economic perspective, we say they want to maximize their profit.
Do.
How do they go about doing that?
Yeah, we've got a chart that I have in the textbook. I will go ahead and bring it up here. There's a couple ways to think about it, but at the end of the day, let's imagine the revenues that we get in are just, if we sell a single good and has a certain price, we just multiply that price times the quantity. We would call that the total revenues. And because it's price times quantity, it's going to be a straight line. We can imagine that by the green line. And the cost function typically might have a shape like you see indicated by this red line. Cost might be going up rapidly with output at first, but then as you get some efficiencies, your costs will still rise as you produce more, but you'll get more output relative to the cost rise. And you'll get more efficient. And eventually you start getting some diminishing returns, and then the costs start rising at a more rapid rate again. And when your costs are greater than your revenues, clearly you have a loss. So all this area to the left of Q1 is illustrated in this chart are areas where the entrepreneur is suffering loss. But you get to this point where the green is greater than the red line. Now all that area, in every quantity between Q1 and Q2, the entrepreneur is making some profit. And then the question is, well, how do you get that to the maximum amount? Well, graphically, you just want to get where this point where the revenues exceed the cost by the greatest amount. And we represent this by Q star in the diagram, trying to get that greatest delta. You can see, maybe not clearly seen, but if you go up here, you can see that's a little shorter than that would be, and that's indicative. economists then go a step further, say, well, instead of thinking about all these total costs and total revenues that come into play, maybe just think about the incremental costs and the incremental revenue. And that's another way to look at it. So if we're selling one good which has a constant price no matter how many they sell, the marginal revenue or the incremental revenue will just be equal to that price. And so they can sell as many as they want at that particular price. But the marginal cost curve is going to look something like the shape that you see here. It's going to go down initially as we get some of those gains from specialization, the division of labor. But eventually it starts to rise as we get diminishing returns. And we always want to produce wherever we can get the most gain from this difference as we saw over here between total revenue and total cost. But actually where we're going to want to produce every time is at Q star, which was equal to this point over here. And here's the way to think about it. At this particular condition, you're having the one produced be exactly equal to the marginal revenue, exactly equal to the marginal cost. You're not making any money there, but you go all the way up to, because imagine this, let's say, you might think, well, let's just produce over here where we have a big difference between the cost of one unit, or the cost of one unit and it's the revenue you can receive. Well, if you stop there, this next unit over here, you could still sell it for more than it costs. And this one you could sell for more than it costs. And this one and this one. You got to go all the way out to here to get all the possible profit you could have. So it doesn't matter, and we're going to talk about that in the next subsequent video. It doesn't matter whether you're a monopoly firm or a perfectly competitive firm or what your structure is. You always want to sell any good as long as the incremental revenue is greater than the incremental cost. And to stop short of that would not be getting all the profit you could from that.
So to summarize that briefly, if profit equals total revenue minus total cost, you're trying to maximize that. That's what you're showing in the right,
on the right
graph.
side.
And you do that where marginal cost, you go up to the point where marginal cost equals marginal
That's
revenue.
right. To say one is to say the other. They
Right,
are the same.
exactly.
And which is why we've got indicated the Q star are the same in each of those cases.
All right, well, I think that's enough for profit, economic profit, and maximizing that profit. So thank you for joining us for this episode of No Free Lunch, Economics for a Fallen World.